Welcome to Speaking of Sports. I'm your host, Jared Slack. This week I'm going to go over week 5 and 6 of the NFL and talk about these crazy MLB playoffs, go over some college football, and throw in some fantasy football. Before I start, I'd like to remind you that if you're too busy on a regular basis to watch and you're on the road or you're working, whatever you want to do, you can go listen to the podcast instead of watching the video. You can go to Mute Mogul Radio Show on Facebook, or you can download the Podbean app and just follow Speaking of Sports and give that a listen, please. I'm going to start with the National League. My picks were way off for both these series. Both the Braves and the Dodgers lost in the 5-game series. It was a huge surprise for me. I mean, the Dodgers had 106 wins in their series, and they got knocked out before the NLCS game. It was a good game until the 10th inning. The Nats had the bases loaded, and they hit a grand slam. On the other hand, the Braves and the Cardinals was not so much a good game. The Cardinals put up 10 runs in the first inning. I believe that was a MLB record for a playoff. After that, it was smooth sailing for the Cardinals. The Cardinals won that game 13-1. And now on to the American League games. The Yankees swept the Twins in 3 games, and it wasn't much of a competition for New York. After the season that Minnesota Twins had, you would think they put up more fight, and they did have a really good season. But it really didn't affect the Yankees whatsoever. Now they're moving into the next round, into the ALCS. The other series between Houston and Tampa Bay, Houston took the first 2 games. It looked like they were going to make it an easy series. Then Tampa came back and took the next two games. For MLB's sake, I do want the Astros to win this series, mostly because of the fan base for Tampa Bay. They don't have a very good fan base. Their ratings are down. They've had to tarp sections of their stadium just because they can't put fans in the seats, and that's not good for Major League. This team needs to be relocated, be somewhere that fans want to see baseball, and Tampa Bay does not deserve a Major League team right now, baseball-wise. I think this game was yesterday, which I wasn't able to air it because I record before it. But hopefully, in the ALCS, you have the New York Yankees and the Houston Astros. Let's see. And on today the NFC starts between the Cards and the Nats, and I think that will be a pretty good series. It was a surprising series for me, but the Cardinals and the Nationals are going. How do you think that Bryce Harper feels right now watching his old team potentially go to the World Series? I bet he's bummed out about that one. Okay, now on to Week 5 of the NFL. I will start with Thursday night's game between the Rams and the Seahawks. This was by far the best game that I've watched all year. It was a lot of scoring back and forth between both teams. Both quarterbacks had a tremendous game. This game ended with the Rams missing a field goal, and the Seahawks won the game 30-29. But that does not say it all. This game was so awesome. It had a late interception, a tip ball that was intercepted by the Seahawks. Okay, now on to the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray and Clinton Kingsbury got their first win of the year over the Bengals. They won the game 26-23, and that brings the Cardinals to 1-3-1, and the Bengals to 0-5. The Colts and Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. This was a pretty good game, a weird game, especially for Patrick Mahomes. He did get one passing touchdown early in the game. Other than that, it was all Colts defense, even though they were very limited to what they had in the secondary. The Colts won that game 13-19. Okay, now on to the Packers and Cowboys. The Cowboys had a early turnover in the game. That seems to be, these past 2 weeks, what it's been like. Just turnovers is what's killing this Cowboys offense. And their run defense. Their run defense has really been killing them ever since last year against the Colts. They gave up a ton of yards to Aaron Jones, the Packers running back, and Aaron Rodgers didn't do much for him. For the Packers, it looked as if the Cowboys were kind of shutting him down. He got some late throws to win the game, but other than that, the Cowboys pretty much shut Aaron Rodgers down and just let Aaron Jones run all over him. The Cowboys need to stop the turnovers. Amari Cooper was saying that he thinks that 2 of those interceptions were on him as the receiver. And the third interception, if you didn't know, it is a ball to Dak threw the ball to Gallup. Gallup was getting interfered that whole play, and the whole reason that Dak threw that ball to him was to try to get all the refs to look in that same direction to call that penalty, because it was clear and obvious penalty. The cornerback had Michael Gallup's head pushed down to the ground his whole route, and when Dak threw that ball, instead of throwing at the ground, he threw into the defender's hands, and the defender caught the ball and an interception. But yes, that was on Dak for throwing it in the direction of the cornerback, but not. It was not on him for throwing that ball at all, because it was a good decision by him, and it should have been a call. If it wasn't for the turnovers, the Cowboys would have won this game. Play by play, they matched up perfectly with the Packers. It was a great game other than those turnovers. Dak had, it was like 450 yards, something like that, through the air. He had a great game. Okay, now let's go to some college football. First thing, Saturday morning, you had the Red River rivalry between number 6 Oklahoma and number 11 Texas. Like recent years, this could possibly be a high-scoring game. Sam Ehlinger will need to have another incredible game versus these Sooners. Oklahoma will be favored in this game, but Texas is a more physical team, and this could be the factor in this game. You also have number 1 Alabama, number 24 Texas A&M. So far, Alabama has averaged 42 points against their opponent. So what's a realistic outcome for these Aggies? Can they make it a competitive game, kind of how they did last year against Clemson? They forced it into overtime. It was just an overall great game by the Aggies. Ultimately, they ended up losing that game, but nobody expected them to compete like that against Clemson. So could you expect that against this number 1 Alabama team? If so, this will be a great game, but I mean, realistically, it's more than likely going to be a blowout, unfortunately. At 7 p.m. on Saturday, you have number 7 Florida at number 5 LSU. This will be the best game on Saturday night, and it's a big one for both teams. LSU needs to get the win in this game if they have any chance in playoffs. They have a rough schedule coming up. They have Auburn and Alabama. So here's their chance to make some names with themselves. Now I want to talk about the Cowboys Week 6 against the Jets. Okay, so the Jets, they have a terrible offensive line. They are giving up a ton of sacks, but that could have been because of the young quarterback that they had replacing Sam Darnold. But now Sam Darnold's back, and this is going to make the game more competitive for sure. They have Le'Veon Bell in the backfield. He's having a good year. So the Cowboys are really going to need to contain Le'Veon Bell. They're going to need to put someone like Jordan Lewis on him. I wouldn't want to put Leighton Vander Esch on him. Normally I would, kind of like Leighton did Alvin Kamara. But Le'Veon Bell is just too experienced. He's too quick for any of the linebackers, even though they're still pretty quick. It seems as if there's going to be the Jets are going to try to chip away at our defense, just get small yards. So I do think there's going to be a lot of third downs in this game, a chance for the Cowboys to get off the field early. And if they can do that, I think the Cowboys are going to win pretty well. Now for the other side of the ball, the Jets' defensive secondary is not very good. It seems as if the Cowboys might be able to pass all over them. They're up front. The Jets up front is pretty good, their defensive front. is pretty good. So you might not see a big game from Zeke. He hopefully is used in a lot of play action, and they get back to what they were doing before, and just throwing the ball more, a lot of play action, a lot of short passes. Short passes will turn into long passes, but the same thing for the run. Those 3-4 yard runs that you see in the first quarter turn into 10 runs in the third quarter, 15 yards in the fourth quarter. Like they keep building. Defenses tend to want to not get hit in the mouth when you do it so often throughout the game. And I do think the Cowboys are going to win this game, but the Cowboys are also without their two tackles, the right and left tackle, this game, and this could make it a little bit better odds for the Jets. So we'll see come Sunday. Okay, now on to Week 5 Fantasy Football's perfect lineup. Houston's quarterback Deshaun Watson had the leading points for quarterbacks. He had 426 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns, and 47 yards on the ground for 41.74 points. For your running backs, you have Aaron Jones against that Cowboys defense, like I told you. He had 107 rushing yards with 4 touchdowns, 7 receptions for 75 yards for 49.2 points. He had nearly 50 points. Christian McCaffrey, he had 176 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions for 61 yards from the air, and 1 touchdown for 47.7 yards. And for your receivers, you have Will Fuller for the Houston Texans. He had 14 receptions, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns for 53.7 points. And you have Michael Thomas for the Saints. He had 11 touchdowns, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns on 41.2 points. And Amari Cooper for the Dallas Cowboys. He had 11 receptions, 226 yards, 1 touchdown on 39.6 points. Oh, Amari had the most yards through receivers this week. Okay, on to your tight ends. You have George Kittle. He had a good game. He had 18 rushing yards. He had 6 receptions, 70 yards for 1 touchdown for 20.8 points. How's that from a tight end spot? That's a pretty good game for him. All right, kicker. This is going to hurt a Cowboy right here. Dan Bailey. He had 2 PATs made. He had 2 field goals from 30 to 39 yards. He had 2 field goals from 40 to 49 yards for a total of 14 points. He didn't do too well last year. I don't know if he's still coming off the injury. That's why the Dallas Cowboys cut him. And believe it or not, Brett Maher still had a better field goal percentage than him last year. Doesn't look like that this year, but Dan Bailey might be making it back into the game. Doing pretty well. All right, so your number 1 defense will be the Philadelphia Eagles. They had 10 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, 2 touchdowns. Wow. And they only allowed 6 points for a total of 35 points. And that was for a total of 342.94 points. That was by far the best fantasy week so far. A lot of points scored. It was a very exciting week in the NFL. And that's all I have for this week. Make sure to go like, share on the Mute Mogul Radio Show, Mute Mogul Facebook page. Go watch it, download it, like it, share it, comment on it, whatever you want to do. Until then, thank you for tuning in to Speaking of Sports. I'm your host, Jared Slack.